The aroma of freshly baked cupcakes wafted through the cozy kitchen of Clara's small bakery, Sweet Whisk, nestled in the heart of a bustling city. Clara, a petite woman with flour-dusted hands and a perpetual smile, hummed a cheerful tune as she meticulously piped swirls of pastel-colored frosting onto a batch of vanilla cupcakes. Her bakery was her pride and joy, a place where she poured her heart into every creation. Today was no different, except for the fact that her best friend, Max, had decided to drop by unannounced. Max was a self-proclaimed inventor, though eccentric tinkerer might have been a more accurate description. His workshop was a chaotic mess of half-finished gadgets, spare parts, and blueprints that only he could decipher. Despite his scatterbrained nature, Max had a knack for creating things that were equal parts brilliant and bizarre. Clara adored him for it, even if his visits often ended in some form of mild chaos. "Clara! You'll never believe what I've been working on." Max burst through the bakery door, his wild hair sticking out in every direction and his lab coat smeared with what looked like soot. He held up a small, metallic device that resembled a cross between a flashlight and a futuristic stapler. Clara raised an eyebrow, setting down her piping bag. "Max, please tell me that's not another one of your revolutionary inventions that's going to explode in my kitchen." "Explode? Pfft, no way." Max grinned, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "This, my dear Clara, is the Molecular Enhancer 3000. It can amplify the molecular structure of any object, making it stronger, faster, and more efficient. Imagine the possibilities." Clara crossed her arms, her skepticism evident. "And what, exactly, are you planning to enhance with that thing?" Max's grin widened. "Well, I was thinking, cupcakes." "Cupcakes?" Clara blinked, her confusion mounting. "Max, cupcakes are already perfect. They don't need enhancing." "Ah, but that's where you're wrong." Max wagged a finger at her. "What if I told you I could make your cupcakes even more delicious, more irresistible? Imagine the business you'd get." Clara sighed, knowing there was no talking Max out of his latest harebrained scheme. "Fine. But if you ruin my cupcakes, you're banned from the bakery for a month." "Deal." Max eagerly set the Molecular Enhancer 3000 on the counter and began fiddling with the controls. Clara watched warily as he aimed the device at a freshly frosted cupcake and pressed a button. A soft hum filled the air, and a faint blue light enveloped the cupcake. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the cupcake began to glow faintly, its frosting shimmering like stardust. Clara's eyes widened in amazement. "Max, that's actually kind of cool." "Told you." Max beamed, clearly pleased with himself. "Now, let's see how it tastes." Clara picked up the enhanced cupcake and took a cautious bite. Her eyes lit up as the flavors exploded on her tongue, rich vanilla, creamy frosting, and a hint of something indescribably magical. "Max, this is incredible. It's like the ultimate cupcake." Max pumped his fist in triumph. "I knew it. The Molecular Enhancer 3000 is a game-changer." Encouraged by Clara's reaction, Max decided to enhance the entire batch of cupcakes. One by one, he zapped them with the device, each one glowing briefly before returning to normal. Clara couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. This could be the breakthrough her bakery needed. But as Max reached for the last cupcake, his hand slipped, and the Molecular Enhancer 3000 tumbled to the floor. The device let out a loud bzzzt as it hit the ground, and a surge of energy shot out, engulfing the entire tray of cupcakes. "Max!" Clara cried, her heart racing. "What did you do?" Max scrambled to pick up the device, his face pale. I think it might have overloaded." Before Clara could respond, the cupcakes began to tremble. The once innocent treats started to grow, their frosting hardening into a metallic sheen. The cupcakes expanded, their shapes shifting and morphing until they resembled something entirely different, small, cylindrical objects with pointed tips. Clara's jaw dropped. "Max, are those bazookas?" Max whispered, his voice filled with equal parts awe and terror. "The cupcakes, they've turned into bazookas." The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. Clara stared at the tray of cupcake bazookas, her mind racing. Max, what are we going to do? These things could be dangerous. Max gulped, his earlier enthusiasm replaced by sheer panic. I don't know. I didn't think this would happen. Just then, the door to the bakery swung open, and a group of customers walked in, their eyes immediately drawn to the bizarre sight on the counter. Clara's heart sank. This was not how she wanted her bakery to be remembered. Special promotion? Clara offered weakly, forcing a smile. The customers exchanged confused glances, but before anyone could say anything, one of the cupcake bazookas let out a low hum. The tip began to glow, and a small, frosted projectile shot out, narrowly missing a customer and embedding itself in the wall. Chaos erupted as the customers screamed and dove for cover. Clara and Max exchanged horrified looks. Max, we need to fix this. Now. Max nodded, his hands trembling as he frantically adjusted the settings on the molecular enhancer 3000. I'm trying, but the device is fried. It's going to take some time to repair. Clara grabbed a broom and began herding the customers toward the door. Everyone, out. Now. We'll explain later. As the last customer fled the bakery, Clara turned to Max, her expression a mix of anger and desperation. Max, you have to fix this. If word gets out, my bakery is ruined. Max nodded, his face pale but determined. I'll do whatever it takes. I promise. But as they stared at the tray of cupcake bazookas, now ominously humming and glowing, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much, much worse. New chat. The bakery was in shambles. Frosted projectiles were embedded in the walls, the counter was scorched from a misfired cupcake bazooka, and the air smelled of burnt sugar and panic. Clara stood amidst the chaos, her hands on her hips, glaring at Max, who was frantically tinkering with the molecular enhancer 3000. The device sparked and hissed, clearly beyond repair, at least for the moment. Max, I swear, if you don't fix this, I'm going to turn you into a cupcake, Clara said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. I'm trying, Clara. But this thing is fried. Max replied, his hands shaking as he fiddled with a screwdriver. I need more time, and maybe some parts from my workshop. Clara groaned, running a hand through her flour-dusted hair. We don't have time. What if one of those things goes off again? We're lucky no one got hurt the first time. As if on cue, one of the cupcake bazookas let out a low hum, its tip glowing ominously. Clara and Max froze, their eyes locked on the deadly pastry. With a soft whoosh, a frosted projectile shot out, narrowly missing Max's head and embedding itself in the wall behind him. Okay, new plan. Clara shouted, grabbing a metal tray and holding it up like a shield. We need to contain these things before they blow up the whole block. Max nodded, his face pale but determined. Right. Containment. Got it. Clara grabbed a pair of oven mitts and cautiously approached the tray of cupcake bazookas. If we can just move them somewhere safe, maybe we can figure out how to reverse this. Good idea, Max said, his voice shaky. But where? We can't just leave them in the bakery, and we can't take them outside. What if they go off in public? Clara thought for a moment, then snapped her fingers. The walk-in freezer. It's reinforced, and if one of them explodes, at least it'll be contained. Max nodded, though he didn't look entirely convinced. Okay, but how do we move them without setting them off? Clara hesitated, then grabbed a large baking sheet. We'll slide them onto this and carry them to the freezer. Just, be careful. Max gulped but followed Clara's lead. Together, they carefully slid the tray of cupcake bazookas onto the baking sheet, their hands trembling with every movement. The bazookas hummed and glowed, as if aware of their precarious situation. Okay, on 3, Clara whispered. 1, 2, 3. They lifted the baking sheet, the cupcake bazookas wobbling precariously. Clara's heart pounded as they shuffled toward the walk-in freezer, each step feeling like an eternity. Just as they reached the door, one of the bazookas let out a high-pitched whine. "Oh," Max muttered. "I think it's—" Before he could finish, the bazooka fired, sending a frosted projectile straight into the ceiling. Clara and Max ducked, the projectile exploding in a shower of sparks and frosting. The force of the blast knocked them off balance, and the baking sheet tipped, sending the cupcake bazookas tumbling to the floor. "No!" Clara screamed, diving to catch them, but it was too late. The bazookas hit the ground with a series of loud clangs, their tips glowing brighter than ever. "Run!" Max shouted, grabbing Clara's arm and pulling her toward the door. They barely made it out of the bakery before a series of explosions rocked the building, the force of the blast shattering the windows and sending debris flying into the street. Clara and Max crouched behind a parked car, their ears ringing from the noise. When the dust settled, they peeked out to see the bakery engulfed in smoke, the front wall partially collapsed. "My bakery," Clara whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's ruined." Max looked stricken, his face pale with guilt. "Clara, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault." Clara took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "We don't have time for apologies. We need to figure out how to fix this before someone gets hurt, or worse." Max nodded, his determination returning. "You're right. I'll go to my workshop and see if I can salvage the molecular enhancer 3000. Maybe I can reverse the effects." "And what am I supposed to do?" Clara asked, her voice tinged with desperation. "Keep an eye on the bakery," Max said. "Make sure no one goes inside. I'll be back as soon as I can." Clara watched as Max sprinted down the street, his lab coat flapping behind him. She turned back to the smoldering remains of her bakery, her heart heavy with worry. This was supposed to be her dream come true, and now it was a nightmare. As she surveyed the damage, a crowd began to gather, drawn by the noise and smoke. Clara's stomach churned as she realized the extent of the situation. News of the cupcake bazookas would spread like wildfire, and her reputation and her business would be ruined. But there was no time to dwell on that. Clara straightened her shoulders and approached the crowd, forcing a smile. "Everyone, please stay back. There's been a minor accident, but everything's under control." The crowd murmured, their eyes wide with curiosity and concern. Clara knew she had to keep them at bay until Max returned with a solution. But as she glanced back at the bakery, she couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much, much worse. Meanwhile, Max burst into his workshop, his mind racing. He grabbed a toolbox and began rummaging through the mess of spare parts and gadgets, searching for anything that could help him repair the molecular enhancer 3000. But as he worked, a nagging thought crept into his mind. What if he couldn't fix it? What if the cupcake bazookas were permanent? The thought sent a chill down his spine. He couldn't let Clara down, not after everything she'd done for him. As Max worked, the sound of sirens filled the air. He froze, his heart sinking. The authorities were on their way. If they found out what had happened, he and Clara could be in serious trouble. "No time to waste," Max muttered, his hands moving faster. He had to fix the device, and fast. Back at the bakery, Clara stood guard, her eyes scanning the crowd for any signs of trouble. She knew it was only a matter of time before the authorities arrived, and she had to be ready to explain the situation, without making it sound completely insane. But as the minutes ticked by, Clara's anxiety grew. Where was Max? What if he couldn't fix the device? What if the cupcake bazookas were still active, hidden somewhere in the rubble? Just as her thoughts began to spiral, a familiar voice called out. "Clara! Over here!" Clara turned to see Max running toward her, the molecular enhancer 3000 clutched in his hands. Her heart leapt with hope. "Did you fix it?" Max nodded, though his expression was grim. "Sort of. It's not perfect, but it should be enough to reverse the effects, if we can get close enough to the bazookas." Clara's relief was short-lived as the sound of sirens grew louder. "We're running out of time, Max. The police are on their way." Max took a deep breath, his eyes filled with determination. Then let's do this. For your bakery, and for us. Clara nodded, her resolve hardening. Together, they turned toward the smoldering remains of the bakery, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But as they stepped inside, they couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come.